When the title card comes up, it says, I may destroy you, and then you deletes. I may destroy you. I may destroy myself. I may be completely thoughtless and just destroy any and everything around me. Who is saying I may destroy? Is it Arabella? Is it the man that sexually assaulted her in episode 1? Who may destroy? And that I like to leave, just like with everything else, I'm leaving it for us to be curious about and to think about. I don't have a certain answer, which is where I like to stay as a creative. I have to give credit really to my graphic design team because it was largely them and the animators. Okay, so this door, obviously because we had permission to film there, was open, so it would have really been just very easy for her to go through, but I needed it to feel like she was breaking and entering because this scene, this moment, this sequence is about crossing the boundary into a space that doesn't belong to you, which is the whole kind of theme for this episode. It's called Line, Spectrum, Border. And she has all these associations with men and crossing boundaries, and she doesn't realize that she herself is invading people's spaces and crossing boundaries, so that's what it was for. Oh, and also I'm using the pen that she stole from Biagier's house to she tries to pick the lock with the pen, which is just really pathetic, so I thought that was cool. Italy was important to me because I wrote the second season of Chewing Gum there for a lot of the time. I wasn't in Ostia, I was in Firenze, and I fell in love with Italy. I had a really great time. I didn't really concentrate on my work, which was good because a lot of that has informed this show. I also loved doing it in Ostia because there was water. And water is a theme, not only because of the water inside of us, it's also to do with the fact that, we have this thing like sand, sea level, but actually this is all one. The water is inside of us. It's here, it's a part of us. And there's a oneness thing that I think I'm just sort of obsessed with. We have all these divides, but really, this is all one big ecosystem. And if we start destroying one thing, we start destroying the next thing. And there's something I find quite fascinating about it. We were in Italy for 2 weeks, shooting every day. And also, because some of the scenes are like dawn, some of them are dusk, our shooting hours were really frantic. We would sometimes do a normal kind of 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then the next day we would begin at 4 p.m. and finish at 4 in the morning. It was probably the most manic part of the shoot. It was fun because we were in Italy and that was lovely, but the hours were astoundingly crazy. Okay, so at this moment, she's trying to make a phone call to Terry, her best friend, and she's forgetting that she's run out of international data. And Terry is her solid ride or die friend, but by this point in the series, Arabella is changing a lot and she has maxed out all her credit cards and she makes Terry pay for this trip to Italy that Terry doesn't even condone. And now that her plans haven't worked, Biagier's locked her out of the house. She's now kind of calling Terry again, trying to get some more help, but she's got no data. Terry is the person that told Simon to leave Arabella at the bar, which Arabella does not know yet. And it's quite interesting. I think, when you find out your best friend has maybe done something questionable or kept a big secret from you, I think is scary. I think it's scary for Terry because she has this big secret, but also she is the one person that is looking after Arabella. And in terms of how Arabella responds, it's for later in the series, so I can't reveal to you what happens when that secret is exposed. And this moment, when she sort of just sat there, she doesn't know where to go, so she goes back to the place that Biagio took her in episode 3, and it's scary. There's no one there, there is no sound, and she's scared. And what I'm kind of trying to explore is this idea of being completely by yourself and completely afraid. And what are you afraid of if you're the only person there? You're afraid of yourself. And so I'm kind of bringing her into this phase across her journey where she's realizing that she is perhaps scared of her own power and of her own potential to be an incredibly dangerous person. I juxtapose Kwame's storyline with Arabella's in this episode because they're both exploring this kind of concept of boundaries and borders and spectrums, and basically it hasn't worked out for either of them. Kwame has tried to explore the kind of limitlessness of his sexuality, but in order to do that, he may have withheld information from Niloufer, so it's all come kind of falling to pieces, his attempt to kind of explore his power and his sexual power and his sexual freedom, which didn't have to be that way, but he didn't go about it the right way. Arabella also did not have to invade Biagio's space the way she did. She didn't read the signals, and it's all fallen to pieces for her as well. So there are parallels with their storylines of crossing boundaries and borders, and what happens when you do that. It can be great, and it can also be absolutely devastating. And also, it's the isolation for both of them. He's kind of punished by Niloufer for simply attempting to explore himself because he's omitted information from her. And what he's doing in this moment, where he's been rejected and where he feels pain, he's looking for comfort, and he returns to Grindr to find it. Also, it's raining and Arabella's by the sea, and water is incredibly important for me in this series because it's very powerful. It's the thing that you look at when you're by the sea and you're suddenly aware that this thing could swallow you whole and how kind of tiny you are, but also the fact that we are made mostly of water. We are made of the thing that can destroy us, which I find just like really interesting to think about and explore. It's also why there is a poster in Arabella's room that we see throughout the series, and it keeps kind of falling down. And the poster is of the shape of a man, and there's water that goes like up to here. And it says on the top, we are made of 70% water. I think for women, it's 60. But yeah, it's just that kind of idea of her not knowing how much power she has in her. And when you don't know how much power you have in you, the power controls you instead of you controlling it, and it can lead you to become a very interesting person. So that's why that poster's there, and it keeps falling down, and she sticks it back up to try and like put everything back together, but it then falls down again. And now we're at the beach and Arabella has woken up. So she has paper in her hand, which means because she was scared, she spent time writing on the beach to kind of focus herself, which is something that I do when I go to places. Like I write in the middle of nowhere, in like a cabin on a farm, just in crazy places where I often feel like terrified, but in that terror, I force myself to write because it's the only thing I can do to sort of not feel afraid. We can kind of decipher that she's sort of gotten creative in this time of fear, which is what I do. It's what I did a lot to write this series. So earlier on in the episode, she finds out that the investigation has closed, and her response, she's quite subdued, but really, I think that she's really angry, but she doesn't have an outlet for her anger, which is what leads her to find kind of solace, is that the right word? Solace, comfort, something, in Biagio, and when that doesn't work, we see her rage come out, and all that rage it's really just about the investigation, but she is not very good at processing her feelings and allowing her feelings to flow when they should, so it's suppressed, and then Biagio locks her out and everything comes out at him. So yeah, this is kind of Arabella's mode. She doesn't know how to confront her own feelings as they occur. She immediately puts everything in a box, and because she's put it in a box and ignored it, it then manifests in ways that she can't control. And this is her kind of like the day has broken and the light's out, and she looks kind of hungover, but she hasn't had any alcohol. So it's kind of like it's a hangover from the rage and remembering everything that just happened and maybe the regrets. You know, sometimes like if you wake up in somebody's bed that you didn't know, it's like, oh, I really did that. She's kind of like having a, oh my God, what did I do moment. Do you know what? This sequence, it was a really last minute draft. I completely reimagined this episode. We weren't even supposed to go back to Italy after episode 3. And I, as I like to do, just spring it up on people and stress the hell out of them. I randomly decided that we should go back to Italy and she should return there. Why? Why? There's something about, she gets really, her relationship with Biagio, she sees him as this kind of, oh, even though he's a drug dealer and he's really scary, he protects me. And actually, in that moment, the only scary person is Arabella. Arabella is the person that stole the key from under his mat, entered his house, and then basically suggested that she wasn't gonna leave without giving him any warning at all. And so I like this idea of her not realizing that actually out of the two of them, out of her and the other, who may be the more powerful person, who may be the person capable of breaking and entering, destroying, and at this moment, I'm bringing her closer to the idea that it might be her, which isn't a bad thing because she needs her power. And this is the moment where she gathers up the kind of darkness that she needs to overcome her trauma. And I'm constantly exploring the idea of going under the bed, under the sea, underneath, under. So this was another way of sort of having this line and going under the line or through the line, and that's what it is. And this music is music from my friend. His name's Gideon and he's a cantor in a synagogue. And I met him during Black Earth Rising because Black Earth Rising had a theme tune that was written by Leonard Cohen, and he had like a synagogue choir, and it was Gideon's. And so we met, we became friends, and he sent me a bunch of music, and I was like, this works perfectly for what we're about to see. Also, I had, for this scene, like 2 wetsuits on. I had to wear shoes that are like twice my actual shoe size. And my amazing costume designer for the show, Lindsay, didn't realize that I wanted to go into the water with the coat. I think it was, I don't know, maybe it was some vintage Versace coat that she found in some vintage shop. And she was like, Michaela, we don't have another one of these coats. And I was like, but it's just water. And she was like, Michaela, we can't do it. And I was like, no, we have to. She goes in with the coat. I did destroy the coat. She was right. I also had these huge weights strapped around my waist because the first couple of times that we tried this, because I am actually not that comfortable in water, I kept floating because I didn't want to go under the surface. So they strapped all these sort of weights around me to kind of make my body weight sink under the water. We shot this in October. The water, do you know what? I don't really remember what the water was like because my mind is always in 100 different places because I'm co-directing the scene, I've written the scene. So my mind is I'm also aware that we have about 2 attempts in that coat. Also the wig, everything is being considered at the same time. So it was the last thing on my mind because I just really wanted to get the shot. And we have this, we had a drone that day, which was cool. And I also had my DoP, Adam Gillum, who was in the water with me, so I wasn't alone, which was cool. So what I like is that you watch this and you just don't know what she's doing, and going into water and submerging yourself does seem like you want to drown, but also it's a form of baptism. It's what religious ceremonies do often, not to die, but to be reborn, and we really don't know what's happening. I mean, throughout this show, generally, I'm never trying to tell the listener or the watcher, the audience, how to feel, what to think, or who to judge. I'm just presenting a story. I'm presenting movement. I'm presenting people doing things. And if I was trying to get you to think a certain way, I think that would have been a forfeit to the kind of show that I'm trying to create. And you can see at the bottom of the camera, you've got her paper and her passport and stuff, so. In the real sea, there's a break, which we removed in VFX because without the break, it makes it look like she could be going into much deeper water. But the truth is, my feet were always actually at the bottom, so it wasn't very deep. Yeah. And now she's gone. And then she returns just before it cuts. I guess, as I said, with the poster and the realizing that you are water and you are the thing that you're afraid of, if you go back to episode 1, when she's in the taxi coming back from Italy, she has these memories, and one of them is of her being at the beach with Biagio, and the tide comes to her and she flinches because she's scared of the water. And now she's realized her power and her danger, so she's just walked into the sea and she emerges like a sea monster. Jim, that's my sound designer, added in this sound it's like a roar, and it's really tiny. It's just like an indication of where she's going to go for the rest of the series. In the original version, she comes back up, walks back to the shore, spits out the seawater, and just walks, picks up her passport and walks. But we thought this was much more powerful. Mike, the editor for this episode, was like, what about this? And I was like, yes. Performing this scene, but actually kind of doing any of Arabella's stuff in this season, it's as cathartic as any character is cathartic. The writing of it is deeply cathartic. But once I'm shooting, there's 5 jobs going on at one time. I'm conscious of the time, how long have we got left? daylight is coming soon. Everything is on my mind, which means performance, just like with chewing gum, is like the last thing that I think about, which is good because it means it's sort of just flowing through me when I write these scenes and when I write these characters. They kind of come with a way of being, and that's why I like a lot of the actors they see what's on the page and then they sort of find a way to humanize it. It's all kind of there. So this bit, the acting bit, is like the bit where you can just sort of, and she just comes out. Arabella just sort of moves of her own accord, and that's it.